There are scorelines that flatter, and there are scorelines that tell the whole story. Switzerland 4, Bosnia-Herzegovina 1 is firmly in the second category. From the moment Switzerland took the lead, there was a controlled authority about everything they did, a team that knew exactly where they were going and trusted every step of the process to get there. Bosnia managed to pull one back, which gave the scoreline a hint of false respectability, but Switzerland never looked threatened. They responded with the composure of a side that had already decided the outcome. The fourth goal was the punctuation mark, the moment the match stopped being a contest and became a demonstration. What made this result so striking was not just the margin, but the manner. Switzerland were not reckless or lucky. They were surgical. Every transition, every press, every ball into the final third looked rehearsed and deliberate. For Bosnia, conceding 4 at this level of competition is a wound that goes beyond the tactical. It raises questions about readiness, about the gap between ambition and execution on the biggest stage. But for Switzerland, this was the kind of performance that changes how neutrals perceive you. Before games like this, Switzerland are respected. After games like this, they are feared. That distinction matters enormously in a World Cup, where psychology and momentum can carry a team just as far as ability. Switzerland's success at major tournaments has always been tied to individuals who carry dual identities, players whose personal stories mirror the multicultural fabric of the Swiss squad itself. That tradition was on full display against Bosnia. The Swiss have consistently produced players who feel the weight of representing a country that is not always the land of their family's origin, and that tension tends to produce a particular kind of hunger. Against Bosnia, the players who drove Switzerland forward did so with a directness and intensity that felt personal, not just professional. There is something worth noting about how Swiss players perform against Balkan opposition specifically. Many of them have roots in that region: Kosovo, Albania, North Macedonia, and yes, the former Yugoslav states. Playing against Bosnia is never purely a football match for some of these players. It carries an undercurrent of identity, of something to prove, of a complicated relationship with heritage. Whether that added edge explains the sharpness and aggression Switzerland showed here is impossible to measure, but it is impossible to ignore. Xherdan Shaqiri, the most visible symbol of Switzerland's multicultural generation, has long been the player who crystallizes this story. His presence in the squad, whether starting, impacting from the bench, or simply embodying the culture of the team, matters beyond statistics. Switzerland's collective quality on this day was the story, but it was a collective built on individual journeys that are anything but ordinary. And that final push is what made the difference, and it's what sends them through. Switzerland occupies a curious space in world football. They are perpetually underestimated, persistently competitive, and almost never discussed in the same breath as the tournament favorites. Yet they keep appearing deep in competitions, keep winning important matches, and keep forcing the world to reassess them. A 4-1 victory at a World Cup is not a routine result. It is a statement about where this program stands right now. Swiss football has spent decades building an identity around organization, tactical intelligence, and squad depth rather than individual brilliance. They qualify consistently, they rarely collapse under pressure, and they have developed a culture of arriving at tournaments ready to compete rather than hoping to survive. This result reinforces all of that. For Bosnia-Herzegovina, the story is more complicated and more painful. Qualification for a World Cup represents an enormous achievement for a nation still building its footballing infrastructure, still working through the administrative and cultural challenges that come with being a young football association. Reaching this stage matters, but this loss exposes the gulf that still exists between making the tournament and competing at its highest level. Bosnia's fans travel with genuine passion and genuine hope. A result like this tests both. The question for Bosnian football is whether moments like this become motivation for the next cycle or whether they confirm a ceiling. The answer depends entirely on how the federation, the coaches, and the players respond to the humbling reality of what 4 conceded goals at a World Cup actually means. One of the most important tactical concepts this match illustrates is what coaches call defensive compactness versus vertical ambition, and what happens when one team executes it and the other does not. Switzerland set up with clear vertical lines of pressure. When they won the ball, the transition from defense to attack was immediate, direct, and purposeful. They did not waste time building slowly when the opportunity to go forward quickly existed. This is a deliberate tactical identity. Against a team like Bosnia, who can be vulnerable in the spaces behind their midfield when caught transitioning, Switzerland's ability to exploit those moments quickly was decisive. The concept worth understanding here is the difference between possession-based teams and transition-based teams. Switzerland are neither extreme, they are pragmatic. They will keep the ball when it serves them, but they will also go vertical in 3 or 4 passes when the space opens. That flexibility is what makes them difficult to prepare for and difficult to stop. Bosnia, in contrast, needed the game to slow down. They needed Switzerland to be patient, to over-elaborate, to give them time to organize. Switzerland denied them that luxury at almost every opportunity. The fourth goal in particular, regardless of the exact sequence, almost certainly came from a transition moment, the kind of situation where Bosnia were caught between lines and Switzerland punished them before a defensive shape could be established. Understanding this gap in tactical execution explains the scoreline more clearly than any individual moment can. So, where does this result place Switzerland in the World Cup conversation? That is the question this performance forces us to answer, and it is not a comfortable one for the teams still ahead of them in the bracket. Switzerland have a habit of being placed in the second tier of World Cup expectations, behind the traditional powers, behind the fashionable dark horses, and then performing in a way that makes that placement look foolish. A 4-1 win at this stage does not just improve their goal difference, it shifts perception. It changes how opponents approach them in the next round. It gives the Swiss players themselves a psychological foundation that is hard to manufacture artificially. The debate this result fuels is one that surrounds Switzerland at every major tournament. Are they genuinely capable of going all the way, or are they a team built for the group stage and the round of 16, rather than the later rounds where margins become razor thin? Their detractors will argue that beating Bosnia 4-1, while impressive, does not answer the hardest question. Their supporters will point to the manner of the performance, the control, the clinical finishing, the defensive solidity, and argue that this is exactly the kind of result that separates contenders from participants. Both arguments have merit. But here is the question I want to leave you with, and I genuinely want to know what you think in the comments. Is Switzerland now a team that other World Cup contenders actively do not want to face? Or are they still, ultimately, a team that the true favorites will figure out when it matters most?